Hi there. So you started your home care agency with a calling to make a difference, to care with compassion, and to build a better future. But what if I told you that the very way you set up your business could be the very thing that takes it down? Here's the truth many don't want to say out loud. If your agency is relying on just one revenue stream, especially something like Medicaid, you are building your future on a house of cards, as some say, a castle in the sky. Even if you have another revenue stream, but it is a very small percentage of your overall revenue, you're practically relying on one. For example, 95% Medicaid and 5% private pay. You are one rule away from a crisis. That's not fear, that's fact. So today, I'm going to be unpacking something every agency owner needs to master. That's the danger of one revenue stream and how to diversify your revenue streams. So let's talk about the risk of putting all your eggs in one basket, or should I say, all your care in one basket. We call that the illusion of stability. Government programs like Medicaid feel safe. The demand is there. The payments are consistent. They may be slow coming initially, but once they start coming, they are consistent. And the clients keep coming. But here's the problem. When one policy changes, your entire business model could collapse. In Maryland, a long-standing home care agency operating for over 20 years had built its entire structure of business around the Medicaid waiver program. They had hundreds of clients. But starting January 1st of this year, 2026, Maryland has mandated that providers on the Medicaid waiver program have all their caregivers as employees as opposed to independent contractors or 1099 workers. I know you're thinking, what? Yes, this meant higher payroll taxes, workers' compensation, unemployment insurance, benefit costs, payroll overhead. The agency simply couldn't absorb the overhead. They had to drop most of their clients just to stay afloat. This agency wasn't ready. And because their entire model was built around Medicaid only, the additional cost broke their budget. They had to release clients they had served for years because they simply couldn't afford to keep going. And sadly, they weren't the only ones. This kind of policy change isn't rare anymore. We are seeing it in other states too, like New York, where in 2025, the governor was pushing for a total revamp of the Medicaid system. Of course, that will come with changes and maybe affect payroll, overhead, and your bottom line. That's why revenue diversification is no longer optional. It's survival. 2 decades of work shaken by one regulation. This isn't a scare tactic. It's real life. It's happening. In fact, industry benchmarking reports reveal that the most financially stable home care agencies typically mix multiple revenue streams, often with private pay making the largest share of their revenue, supported by Medicaid, Veterans Administration benefits, and long-term care insurance clients. Compare that to struggling agencies, those with 80% or more of their revenue from one source, especially Medicaid. They often operate on razor-thin margins and are vulnerable to slow reimbursements, audits, policy shifts, you name it. Here's a quick breakdown of the pros and cons of some of the major non-medical home care revenue streams. Let's start with Medicaid. There's a high demand, there's a steady client base, but then they have low rates, slow pay, sometimes regulations will change or the reimbursement level will change. Sometimes they have low rates, slow pay, strict regulations and audits and more. How about private pay? They have higher rates, flexibility, but they require strong marketing, trust-based selling, and they can be more expensive to acquire new clients. So, how about Veterans Administration for clients who have VA benefits? They have a consistent client base, reliable if set up well. They have a patriotic appeal, but it's complicated to enroll because of tedious credentialing processes, not always the fastest to get started. Long-term care insurance covers high-need clients. There's a cumbersome billing process. There are headaches in submitting for billing. It can be challenging, but again, once it's set up, they would pay consistently, of course, unless you have errors with your billing and so forth. Okay, so that's just a quick rundown of that's 4 major revenue streams for non-medical home care. That's your Medicaid or private pay Medicaid, Veterans Administration, long-term care insurance. I'm not saying this at all, but I just wanted to spotlight some of the major ones, okay, to give you an idea if you're considering diversification, some of the advantages and disadvantages of those, okay? All right. Well, to drive the point home, let's contrast two fictional but real or realistic agency examples, okay? Agency 1 is Medicaid only. It relies 100% on Medicaid. They operate efficiently and serve a large population. They have a huge client base. But when a state policy slashes reimbursement by 10%, they're in a panic mode. Their profit margins already razor thin overnight. And it's not just about cuts. Sometimes the problem is stagnation. What happens when the reimbursement rates stay flat? The minimum wage laws change, or your market demands higher caregiver pay for you to remain competitive. Those agencies get squeezed thin. At that point, they can't afford to raise wages without losing money. But at the same time, if they don't, they lose good caregivers. And without good caregivers, they lose clients. It's a no-win spiral situation. Take a look at Agency B. Medicaid makes up maybe 40% of their income or their revenue, but they also have a thriving private pay client base, several VA referrals, and the premium packages like transportation add-ons or transitional care after hospital discharges. They also have some long-term care clients. They didn't wait for a crisis. They built trust with local referral partners, educated families on the value of premium care, and even partnered with senior living facilities to offer short-term post-op assistance. So when Medicaid made changes, maybe the rates didn't change or the laws for W-2 or 1099 changed, they didn't collapse. They didn't have to panic to meet payroll or whether they could afford caregiver raises. Other revenue streams absorb the shock. So Agency B survives because they built their business on one single revenue stream. Agency B expanded their service offerings to other revenue streams. That makes a big difference. So don't wait for a crisis to diversify. I guess you're asking, what can I do now? Here are 5 powerful steps you could take. Audit your current revenue mix. What percentage of your revenue is tied to each stream? If you see 80% from one stream, you're in a danger zone. Now, before you start saying, really, let me qualify that with this statement because it's different when it comes to private pay. If 80% is private pay, you're still exposed, but the risk is different. Private pay typically has higher margins, faster payments, and fewer regulations. You have more control over your pricing, your service, how you package your services, and your client relationships. But you want to consider this. If there's a local economic downturn or you have one review that messes up your reputation, hey, your entire brand may suffer, okay? So you have to keep that in mind as well. So even if it's 80% private pay, you're still vulnerable. Consider adding niche services like maybe memory care packages or post-op care, like I mentioned, or care management. Explore other avenues, VA, long-term care, and so forth. Now, as you audit your revenue streams mix, if 80% is Medicaid, now you're truly in the danger zone because you are at the mercy of the Medicaid reimbursement rates. In fact, the 2026 reimbursement rate for VA services for home health aid and homemaker services saw a 43% cut effective January 1st of 2026 in states like, I think it's Texas. Okay, so imagine if 80% of your business was from the VA and you had a 43% rate cut. I mean, their rates are fairly high, don't get me wrong, so maybe you could survive, but you don't want to be there, you want to diversify, okay? And as I shared earlier, regulations may change as they have in Maryland in 2026, okay? Now, all Medicaid providers in Maryland have to classify their caregivers as W-2. You know, a sudden change like that can wipe out your margins or force you to either cut staff or stop accepting new clients. You also want to build out private pay offerings. What do I mean? Consider adding on services like respite care, homemaking, caregiver training for families, maybe care management or cleaning services, depending on what your state would allow for your license. So explore VA. I know I just talked about the VA rate cuts, but hey, you can give it a shot, okay? Get credentialed, contact your local VA medical center and introduce your agency. You could also create tiered packages, give clients choices. Don't assume everyone wants the same bare minimum. Instead of offering basic care, bundle it into maybe silver, gold, platinum. People love options and you can control what you present in the different packages. All right. And last but not least, consider educating your clients. Help families understand why quality care has a price. Use your website, social media, and care consultations to explain why investing in quality care is worth it. One way to look at it is that if someone can spend, hey, $7 on a latte every day, more likely they can afford to invest in care for a loved one. This isn't just about money, it's about resilience, it's about your legacy. So, what should you watch out for when adding multiple revenue streams to your home care agency? Let's be honest about what not to do when diversifying. There are certain things to do before you even start. Adding more revenue streams sounds like a smart thing to do, right? And it is, of course, but it's not a magic fix. It's a strategic move that requires preparation, clear systems, and intentional execution. Let's talk about what to watch out for before you dive in headfirst. Don't add new services faster than you can train your team. Here's a common trap. Owner hears private pay, they decide to add transportation to their services. Maybe helping care clients go to doctor's appointments or you name it. That sounds great, right? Another agency in the market is doing it, they want to do it too. But you have to make sure that you have caregivers who are safe drivers, right? You have insurance just in case. So you have to prepare and train your team to be able to deliver the level of care that you're promising your new clients you will deliver with this new service that you want to add on. Okay, it could be service for autistic children. Are your caregivers trained to deliver the level of care that those with autism need? So it's not a matter of just adding another revenue stream. It is a strategic move. So without setting up your new revenue stream correctly, you're going to run into problems. Think about it. Your administrative staff, they need to be ready to accept clients coming from the new revenue stream. If not, and if your caregivers are not, think about it for the transportation example that I gave. Do you have policies and procedures, protocols that they have to follow? If not, the result will be confusion, client complaints, and that could damage your reputation. So before adding a new stream, make sure your team is equipped, not just willing. That means updated job descriptions. I talked about policies and procedures, proper on, okay? So please be very strategic and careful about this. Avoid launching new revenue streams without clear SOPs. Every stream needs its own system of operation, and it can't just live in your head. Who handles inquiries for the new service? What does intake look like for the new service? How do you track and report performance? If you skip over this and try to just wing it, you will end up with chaos instead of cash flow. Okay, so please, like I said, this is a deliberate strategic decision. More streams shouldn't mean more stress. They should bring structure and strength. And remember, SOPs aren't just for you, they are for your team. If you get sick or go on vacation, can your agency run the revenue stream without you? That's the test of a true business, not a job you created for yourself. I know as owners, especially those starting out, we want to do everything by ourselves, or sometimes we don't have a choice, right? We're starting out solo. But if you've started alone, it's still important to have SOPs in place, because when you are ready to add that revenue stream, you have something you can share with your staff, with your field staff, office staff, and so forth. Okay? All right. What's the next thing to watch out for before you start offering multiple revenue streams? It's also important that you don't overlook your state or regulatory implications. Okay. Some services sound simple, but they trigger compliance landmines. For example, in some states, offering transportation may require a separate transport license or special insurance rider for insurance policies. So you want to be very careful to make sure that the new service or the new revenue stream you're adding, you'll be able to comply with your state's, maybe federal or county regulations, maybe your local health department. Okay. Just be very mindful. Make sure you look at your regulations, the license you have, will it accommodate the new revenue stream, the new services you're trying to offer? Do you have the right insurance coverage? They may have a different minimum wage for that service or for people providing that level of care or that type of service. Do your homework. And if you don't have the capacity yet, start small. For example, instead of launching a full Alzheimer's care program, start with a caregiver education or maybe a memory care service. Just a small part instead of going all out. Because when you start out small, you'll be able to see if you have the capacity. You'll be able to see how you're doing with billing and payroll. Are they reimbursing you in time to cover your payroll? So start small. Consider starting small, iron out all the kinks, and then you can scale. Don't be afraid to start slow, and then you scale with experience and wisdom. Many agencies fail because they try to do too much too soon without mastering what they are already offering. That's a recipe for failure. So, what favors the success of multiple revenue streams? Because not every agency is ready to expand. So, here's what sets you up for success: strong core operations. Before adding anything, make sure services run smoothly. Your scheduling, your payroll, your billing, client satisfaction is up, all of that. If your base is broken, more streams just mean more leaks. Document everything. Make sure your documentation system is top notch. If you don't have a great documentation system, it'll be hard for you to delegate. Okay, and you need to delegate some of the admin or whatever the tasks are for your new revenue stream. Make sure your documentation system is excellent, as best as you can, and someone else can follow with simple directions. Use checklists, scripts, policies, flow charts. Make it simple enough that even if you have a new admin or new staff, they can follow it with confidence and with minimal guidance. Try to have dedicated owner time. Revenue stream means expansion, but that takes focus. That's why you need to have your CEO time for planning, not just time for your day-to-day tasks. Use this time to research new opportunities, run numbers, map out your steps. You also want to be ready and you want to create buy-in. Ask yourself, is your team excited? And are they equipped to support this growth? Bring them into the process early. Share the vision, train them well, and reward them accordingly. When your team is aligned, they are excited, execution becomes easier. Make sure you have a real marketing plan. Each revenue stream, your marketing plan, may not be appropriate for your new revenue stream. So make sure you have a marketing strategy, a marketing budget for your new revenue stream, because people don't buy what they don't understand. It's your job to educate them, and you educate them in your marketing. A single revenue stream may feel simple, but it leaves you vulnerable. So multiple streams add strength, but only when built on strategy. If you're just surviving on one source of income, now is the time to shift. Start small, build on purpose, scale with wisdom and experience. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. Let's hear from you. Have you felt the squeeze of relying on a single payer source? Or are you already building out a diversified income model? Drop your biggest takeaway or your next step in the comments below. Your insight could help another owner stay afloat. If you're ready to build a business that lasts, not one policy away from panic, let's talk. Schedule your free 30-minute discovery call or strategy call. We'll audit your revenue mix, identify vulnerabilities, and outline your next steps. Because your mission deserves a model that sustains it.